Okay, I'm making a Fallout 4 plugin, and a plugin is supposed to be about conquering the Commonwealth. So it's basically what the Radiant quests for the Minutemen were supposed to be, but in an actual campaign form. It has proper completion targets, accomplishment rewards, things like that, and you can actually claim territory as your own, and it shows it on the map. In fact, it's similar to how GTA San Andreas does it with gang territory. That's what I wanted to achieve in my mod for Fallout 4, but in the process of doing that, I wanted to make a cool level for people to go through before they gain the ability to conquer territory. So this is me making that map that has a lot of puzzle elements that would be fun to at least complete, but also to kill a lot of people and be introduced to one of the new factions that I'll be adding to the game. This could be the United Settlement Front. This would be Brotherhood territory. This would be Gunners. This would be Raiders. Here I'm trying to decide what areas of the map are going to belong to which faction. And we're working off the base factions of the game, the Brotherhood, the Raiders, the Gunners. And I'm actually making a new faction which will represent the Settlers, because eventually the Settlers are going to be pretty irritated that they have no military force against so many people, or so much oppressive nature from all of these factions, because they're all so strong and the Settlers are there constantly taking it up the ass, essentially. If they make a United Settler Front, which is what this is what the army is called, then it would actually make more sense than what is currently in the game, because in the game you just have a bunch of settlers with their settlements. They're just doing willy-nilly. I mean, pretty much all of them are farmer settlements. One of the main focuses I wanted to do for this mod is to change that, to have manufacture settlements. And traditionally, the player would have to, or not traditionally, but with the DLC, or the inclusion of one of the DLCs, I forgot which one, you were able to create manufacturing facilities in the settlements that you own. And I'm trying to make it so that this is already a default thing for some of these settlements. Not all of them, because, you know, there is going to have to be food. There is going to have to be settlements dedicated to creating food. But there will be different ones. There will be ones dedicated to science or research and development. There will be one dedicated to industrial manufacture, or for food. This will create the main focus on which settlements you may want to focus on capturing depending on the needs of your society. You'll have to manage a society, essentially. Trade routes are going to be integral in keeping settlements which specialize in one thing not having enough of resources of the other for their singular population. One of the other things I was also considering was removing the population limit, or at least putting a more reasonable one than just 20 settlers. That would definitely add to the immersion of the game, in my opinion. But then, well, later on down the line we'll see what technical problems are going to become of that. Here I adopt some Adobe Photoshop skills which are very basic, but the maps in the end looks really nice, clean, kind of. If I minus the notations that I've created on it, it would kind of look pretty good as the regional map. And one thing you should note here is when I'm talking about conquest and controlling territory, these regions are going to be divided into sectors, and sectors are what you capture over time to expand your region. The regions that I'm selecting out right now are the base regions. So you start off with the smallest chunk, and the idea is you capture and you protect until you cover more of an area. And the more area you cover, the harder it's going to be to defend the settlements you have. And this isn't going to be, you know, your typical scripted war. Okay, it's gonna be random chance. Factions are gonna be fighting each other constantly. Territory is gonna be won and lost. And essentially, one faction, this is a possibility in my script, or my plugin, is that one faction is going to reign over another, and a different faction is going to do it every single time. All except the United Settler Front, or... in fact, not even that. Not even that. See, I'm still trying to conceptualize what my plugin's going to be like. I keep calling it a plugin as well, it's more a mod. It's hard to decide whether the players should be a part of a United Settler Front, because they are the weakest force, deterministically. Because, you know, they're supposed to be there to make fucking food for the cities and things like that. Or Diamond City and Good Neighbor and not Concord. What am I trying to think of? The other place with the really fancy city, town. Vault 88 as well, except they have their own hydroponics, so that's not true. But yeah, also they don't accept strangers, so yeah. Yeah, because, like, you could have an option where the players are piece of shit and they decide to wipe out the United Settler Front because they're supposed to be traditionally really good guys. So I mean, it's an option. But yeah, there's definitely a huge amount of potential for something like this with Conquest, or at least the theme of Conquest. This is what gave me the inspiration for the mod. It is massive inspiration for it. What I think I should talk about is these zones in this map. So you see here I've made those notations that I was talking about before that make the map look kind of messy, and otherwise it'd look, you know, pretty alright. But you see how there's a no entry zone and there's the divide. These are actually important contentions. There's the idea of the Commonwealth map being that the further you go to the southeast, the more dangerous the game gets. And there's truth to that because of how encounter zones work. Encounter zones, effectively, they exist in all of the games Bethesda has made, from what I've gathered, or anyone that uses the creation kit as a game engine. So we're talking Skyrim, Fallout 4, Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, potentially. And you'll find some really high level enemies despite your current level in these southeastern zones, because of how encounter zones work with their minimum level and their maximum level. Now, we can actually choose our own encounter zones when I was designing my level, which you'll see later on in the video. And it's quite an interesting thing to look into, because encounter zones are such an important part of the RPG experience and the world immersion. The idea here is that I'm adding a natural boundary so that there's, you know, a physical reason as to why these areas are so difficult to get past. The no entry zone is essentially an extremely well protected area where they're trying to protect against 3 different fronts, essentially. So you have the bridge that goes towards the Central Society, which will be a main contention point between a lot of factions either trying to flank the Gunner Company, or a lot of these super mutants in the game, because the super mutants don't necessarily have their faction. They're not an organized group, they're not intelligent enough to do that. A lot of super mutants will be centralized in the Global Society zone, and they'll be trying to attack through that bridge primarily. So in a no entry zone, that's the most well guarded point, because anyone who doesn't want to go through a choke point like the bridge, which the gunners use to their advantage, you'd have to go through obviously another avenue, and that would be the no entry zone that we've marked off. The no entry zone is going to be marked full of traps, but there's also going to be enough warning for anyone passing that area to not pass the area. And what I find interesting is how this might cause us to change the route of some traveling merchants. There's going to be a lot of conflictions there. If traveling merchants go walking through these parts, they're going to explode, to say the least. We may have to also reorganize the locations of some elements there, and we need to choose more intelligently what's going to be barred off, how it's going to be barred off, and, you know, whether there should be traps or there should be enemies along which fronts. The Gunner Company are very defensive. They don't seek to raid many places, they just want to keep some places to themselves. I'll have to add more settlements along the left side of the map because they simply don't exist. The only settlement that they technically own is the Vault, from what I remember, in the western side. That Vault is going to be their stronghold, and I haven't actually discussed strongholds yet either. Later on you'll see me in the map making big circles talking about strongholds, but I'll point that out later, and I'll most likely pause the clip for you to see that. Strongholds are going to be the primary control point of the region. So you take the stronghold, you own, well, you don't own all of the region, but you own a massive chunk of that region, which essentially diminishes the power of every other settlement. But strongholds are more well guarded the more settlements that they have. So that's a general idea. The divide I haven't actually talked about, so there's the no entry zone that I've explained, but the divide is an entirely new area. I've created this instance there's a location in the game where there is constant war. This is going to conflict with the castle, definitely, creating an entire zone in the game where there will be constant war between 7 nations, the Gunners, the Brotherhood, and the Central Society, and the main conflict point is going to be the divide. There won't be a lot of war against the Brotherhood because of their partition. Essentially, the United Settler Front are going to be going up against the Brotherhood because in the main story, you have to actually annex settlements to work for the Brotherhood to give them supplies. And this gives you the opportunity to go against the Brotherhood in that respect as well. And if you manage to do whatever with the USF, you can attack the Brotherhood and, well, maybe wipe them out, maybe. But that's just an idea. The circles on the map represent strongholds, an important aspect of the mod which adds a high level of complexity to settlements as a whole in Fallout 4. As said before, food industry and research are the 3 main types of settlements. Strongholds are the primary controller of all of the faction's property, the Apex, the Alpha Predator. They are the most heavily guarded structure and are nearly impenetrable, even with some of the best gear in a game, without whittling the entire force down through good strategy or at least good ability. By gaining access to a stronghold, the effective strength of a faction is essentially halved, reducing the defenses of all remaining settlements by a considerable amount. In addition, reinforcements can no longer be called in the event you are detected during the capturing of a settlement, a system that's akin to many open-world, Far Cry-style games of outposts. All factions are capable of presenting a last stand kind of situation. This will mainly be implemented to counteract the free will of the AI, completely wiping out every faction without getting you a chance to fight each and every one of them, where the remaining soldiers retreat and bunker to a select few settlements in a last stand, to become as powerful as their stronghold, in the event that not much of their land is left existing. Yes, it's possible to completely wipe out a faction's presence in the map. Random encounters and general world encounters that occur normally in the game will still occur, but things that I'll add to the game, like road patrols, caravan protection, and salvage crews in the region, will no longer occur, and infiltration will, of course, not be possible by the dead faction.